What's up, YouTube? It's me, and we're back once again with some more Season nonsense. Today we're going to take a quick peek at Tenebria, the newest agent to release, with the third part of the current New Chaos Theater of Illusion. She's an adorable idol who is also an offensive psychic who is in the passion element, so she's doing passion damage, just like our good friends Diana, Haida Marie, Mei Lin. Her gimmick is very unique, and we'll get into that in a second. Wanted to touch base just really quick on what we've got going on here. Basically, she is very much about basic attacks, something we haven't seen since Mei Lin, to be completely honest. And it's rare to see something that is so technical compared to some of the other characters in the passion space. They're very straightforward. Build this, shoot that, boom, 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 done, right? Kind of where we've been so far. So we're kind of building into this whole make her a little bit more tricky, I guess. Where you've got multiple different things that you can do with her in her cards and make her a lot more versatile, I guess is the best way you could put it. So let's take a quick peek at her cards, and then we'll kind of go from there. So her starting cards include 2 basic attacks and 1 basic skill, which is her heal. So we have 2 basic attacks, 1 basic heal. Then we have our standard Epiphany cards. We have Spotlight that does base damage, moves a rhythm card to your hand, and then decreases the cost of that card by 2 until it's used. We have Call and Response, which is a haste card. Does 224% damage. If it is in your hand, it's also treated as a rhythm card so long as it's in your hand. And if you draw it, you can draw an additional rhythm card via Attunement. Encore, which is 134% damage, that if the last card you activated was a rhythm, it activates that card again. And then Photo Time, which is her unique card. It has the unique and retain keywords. It says 1 performance buzz. If a rhythm card is activated or moved into your hand, you increase 1 stack of performance buzz for each card by 1 until you actually use this card, and you can stack it up to a total of 10. So you can do 9 additional stacks up to a total of 10 stacks on this card. The way Photo Time basically works is once you play it, it does nothing until the end of the turn. Then at the end of the turn, it just does extra damage. It's just bam, 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 bam. It's a really interesting card, especially considering the fact that if you have things that affect how much extra damage you do or what the extra damage like is in terms of the actual amount, that damage will increase based on those stats when Photo Time actually triggers at the end of the turn. Now, the only reason I didn't go over Music Start is because Music Start is the gimmick card. This is the card that creates the rhythm cards and then kind of epiphanies into sort of the craziness. Think like 9. So with 9 has her card Hue, which at the beginning of her turn activates and shows up in her hand. And then you can use it as an attack. Music Start is an opener. This is a new keyword we haven't never really seen before, where it basically automatically uses the card at the beginning of combat. So as you get into the fight, it automatically activates Music Start and then generates these rhythm cards for everybody in your party and completely erases all basic attacks in the deck. So if you have characters that are very heavily reliant on basic attacks, like for instance Mei Lin, it removes her normal strikes and replaces them with these rhythm cards. Now in my testing, I have noted that Mei Lin's attack and defense card that says play this, draw up 2 of her basic attacks, where normally it would find where her basic strikes are and put them into your hand and make them cost 0. It does not bring the rhythm cards into your hand for Maylin to use, because I believe that Maylin's card is specifically looking for the card name and not the card type. And it doesn't bring rhythm into the hand because it's looking for basic strike. So it's very unfortunate that card is actually broken because of Rhythm Start's removal of her basic attacks and turning them into rhythm cards. Now, if that changes, maybe we'll update things. But for right now, don't trust it. It doesn't work for me. It might not work for you. If it does, please let me know. But as far as I'm aware, it doesn't. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a non-bow right now. However, let's go over Music Start first. So Music Start generates rhythm cards. Normally what it does is it exhausts all basics and then creates 2 copies of rhythm for each ally in your deck. And then you apply haste to all rhythm cards of Tenebria's. So all of Tenebria's rhythm cards will always have haste, which means they will go before an enemy allows itself to reduce its turn count with that card, which is really good. So be aware. Now, the reason why this is unique is because it's a blue card, which means it can Epiphany. And if it can Epiphany, that means it's probably going to have variants. Just like Hue, it also has multiple variants. For each of the different versions of Music Start that you can get, you will get a different style of rhythm card. Each of the new rhythm cards will do something else. Our first is Crescendo, which gives us 202% damage plus 40% additional damage for each rhythm card in the graveyard. For 1 turn after using it, you will decrease the cost of the next rhythm card activated by 1. This is an interesting one because it applies the decrease to the total AP cost when you go to play the card rather than just reducing the cost of one of the rhythm cards at random in your hand. So whichever one you activate, let's say you have 3, you activate this one, which is 2, and then the next one you go to, even though it says 2, you'll still be able to grab it and put it out like you're going to use it, and it will reduce the cost to 1. So handy if you're trying to keep rhythm cards in a graveyard. Not entirely sure how well that's going to go since we don't have Quietus, and Linked is kind of moot without Tenebria. I'm sorry, without Hydemery. And even then, I'm pretty sure we're looking at E6, and that's going to be pretty rough to get to if you weren't already focused on getting her there anyway. Next up, we have Staccato. Staccato does 90% damage plus 50% damage for each rhythm. So this means just however many you have. So if you have 6, it's plus 50 times 6. Now, it doesn't specifically state whether or not that means all rhythms in deck or all rhythms in hand. I'm assuming it's just in deck. I haven't actually gotten a chance to play around with Staccato yet, but my understanding is it's in deck. If it doesn't specifically state something on the card as to where it's targeting for that card to exist, it typically just means in the deck as a whole, be that in your actual deck or in the graveyard. I think it only doesn't count them if they've been exiled. The final key port here is that if the last card activated was a rhythm, you increase the cost of rhythm by 1. So it makes them more expensive as you continue to utilize them, because this one specifically is 1 cost instead of 2 cost. Next up is Fortissimo. Fortissimo says that it is both linked and can be retained. It does 101% damage plus 55% damage for each linked rhythm before you activate it. And when 3 or more cards are linked, you add an additional hit. Now, the thing about this is, and this is where I was getting to the whole Hydemery situation. E6 Hydemery gives you the ability to maintain a lot more damage with her Effulgent Blades, so long as they're all linked, which typically they are anyway. So now not only are you getting Fortissimo going off with additional blades, but you're getting an additional hit from Fortissimo as well because it was linked with probably at least 3 cards, because that's kind of just how Tenebria functions. She wants as many Effulgent Blades as possible, and you want as many Fortissimo linked to those Effulgent Blades as possible as well. The trouble becomes, especially with this one, if you have multiple copies of Fortissimo linked, there's no Quietus there, which means they're not going to activate. They are simply just going to get grabbed by Link and thrown into the discard pile, which means they're not going to activate. You're only going to get 1 proc of Fortissimo. So it relies extraordinarily heavy on the only other character that can actually do something with it, which is typically going to be Tenebria. Solid idea on paper, but I'm not entirely sure that it's going to do exactly what you think it's going to do, unless you have a way of being able to activate the other copies of Fortissimo if they're linked. Next, we have Fermata. Fermata is a haste card that says select 1 of 4 rhythm cards. You then change all rhythm cards into the selected card for 1 turn, and then draw 2 of them. This one is actually very interesting. It begs the question, would you want to copy Music Start before it epiphanies so that you have 2 copies of the basic version, and then epiphany 1 into 1 and another copy of it into Fermata, so that you have the ability to have different variants of Music Start at the beginning of your turn, so that you have the ability to sort of manipulate what rhythms are showing up. And I feel like that could be a very interesting and very janky setup. So I might mess around with that at some point just to see if it's even possible, and if it is, how that even interacts with the other copies. And then last but not least, we have the Arpeggio Epiphany. A lot, and I mean a lot of people have been looking at how this one works in conjunction with most of the other deck builds that include the Arpeggio cards. So normally you get 1 rhythm. With Arpeggio, it changes the entire basis of how this card works. First of all, you will notice that it says exhaust all basic cards, create 1 each of Rhythm Arpeggio in the draw pile. So here's the thing. Arpeggio is selfish. You've heard me use that term before. It only cares about Tenebria. It does not generate additional copies of Arpeggio specifically for the other 2 members of your party. It will only generate 6 Arpeggio that will only be able to be used by Tenebria. So this is a much more single-focused Tenebria build card versus the other ones that give everybody the basics and turns them into the rhythm cards. As I said, there are a total of 6 of them. The first one is a 0 cost that says 17% damage for each rhythm. Draw 1 of the lowest cost rhythm cards and decrease the cost by 1 until it's activated. The second one is a 1 cost that does 22% damage for each rhythm. Draw 2 of the lowest cost rhythm cards and decrease the cost by 1 until they're activated. There's a 2 cost that does 45% damage, activates 1 of the highest cost rhythm cards in your hand. You've got a 3 cost that does, with the haste keyword, that does 56% damage for each rhythm. You activate 1 of the highest cost rhythm cards from among the draw pile and discard pile. So from either your deck or your graveyard, you can pull it up. There's a 4 cost with the haste keyword that does 90% damage for each rhythm, and then decreases the cost of this specific one, the 4 cost one, by 1 for each rhythm card in your graveyard. And there is a 5 cost Arpeggio that has the haste keyword and does 101% damage for each rhythm, and you can decrease the cost of this card by 1 for each rhythm card that has been activated this turn. So you can see that each of the Arpeggios start ramping up in both damage and playability based on how much the initial starting cost of the card is actually supposed to be. Getting the first 3 is going to make it so that you can activate, reduce cost, lots of card draw. It's very playable, very strong, and obviously if you're utilizing Ray for her basic attack damage boost and her blades that give you the ability to do additional damage, you can kind of see how the damage on these cards is just going to keep continuing to grow and grow and grow. So this is kind of the de facto build right now as far as, hey, I want to do as much damage as physically possible with her. Arpeggio. That is going to end up being the epiphany that most people are going to start looking at. Now, the other cards, obviously, Spotlight, Call and Response, and Encore can also epiphany, but I'm not going to go into those specifically. What I want to do is I want to talk a little bit more about sort of Tenebria's playability in terms of team composition. Normally, I will look at all of the cards, but I'm changing things up a little bit because I kind of feel like some of the other people have already done this a little bit better than I can. And from somebody who's kind of more of a free-to-play standpoint that's really focusing on basic understanding of her card mechanics, specifically because rhythm can be very tricky if you're not paying attention to it, so that you kind of get a little bit more of an understanding of why this is so important. So the reason why I'm talking about this, and especially because we're going to go back to it really quick, Arpeggio is only going to be a card that Tenebria gets. The other 2 members of your party don't get the rhythm cards. These will only go to Tenebria. Now, the reason why this is so important, and the reason why this is kind of the de facto go-to epiphany, is because of her ego skill. Her ego skill says everyone's idle. For the next 7 rhythm cards that you activate, you can increase the damage of rhythm cards by 7%. If you have activated 7 times, 7 rhythms, basically, you've activated rhythm 7 times, you add an extra hit to the next 7 rhythm cards that you activate. So this falls in line with Mei Lin's ult, which is being able to add additional hits to her basics with her ego skill as well. The thing that you will note, and this is why it is very important, is there's 2 pieces to this. One, it means that you're going to be able to utilize your rhythm cards a lot more often. And 2, you are going to hit burnout a lot faster than you would normally do because you're constantly trying to hit as many rhythms as quickly as possible. So performance burnout occurs when you stack 30 times, which means you can no longer use a rhythm card until the end of the turn, at which point it removes the burnout and you can start using them again. So every time you rhythm, it adds a stack. After 30 stacks, you can't rhythm anymore until the next turn. So the reason why it's important is because this makes it so that she can not only hit multiple times, but has the ability to increase the amount of damage that she's doing for the next 7 cards as well. So you build up the 7. After the 7th, you gain the ability to do multiple hits. And while it's not a flat damage increase, you are still doing more damage because you're bouncing off of the boosted damage and continuing on with the extra hit. Now, normally this wouldn't be as good with the other rhythms, as you're only getting 2 each, whereas with Arpeggio you're getting 6. And with the 0, the 1, and the 2 cost cards, you not only have the ability to utilize rhythms more frequently, you're reducing the cost of those rhythms as well to make them more viable, especially the 4 and the 5 cost versions that do a lot of extra damage. So it becomes a kind of an interesting looping game where you're trying to kind of pull the cards you want or need, adding in the attacks that are necessary, and then manipulating how much extra damage you're doing with both multiple Arpeggio procs and her ego skill. So the part that really comes down to sort of where a lot of what people are worried about with her are going to be two pieces. One, you want to focus on her basic card proficiency, which is at the start of battle, you increase the damage of all Tenebria's rhythm cards by 10%. And if her attack is at 500 or higher, it increases the damage of other combatants' rhythm cards by 10% as well. So this is where it becomes a sort of an interesting double-bladed weapon. She herself is already going to have an additional 10%. But if you wanted to not do Arpeggio and do one of the other epiphanies, now everybody's doing 10% increased damage with rhythm. So it benefits both sides, which is both rare and nice to see, especially considering the fact that most times people don't care about their basics. They're gone. Most people will just rip them out of the deck. They're just going to remove them. They're not going to use them. They don't need them. They don't want them. They don't care. It's just baseline. So it just kind of builds to a point where it doesn't matter. Tenebria cares about her basics because she generates basics with rhythm. So it's important to have that. That one is definitely the one that you kind of want to get to first. Her unique stat upgrade gives her the ability to gain additional passion attribute damage for herself, up to a total of 15% if she is at, I believe that is 800 total attack. And then, of course, you've got a lot of your other basic stuff. Her basic card proficiency adds healing to her sound check, which is her basic attack. Which, again, cool, but never going to be used because she removes them from the battle at the beginning of each battle. So it's like not even really worth keeping. Not really worth the problem. And she also has a critical chance and critical damage proficiency at the midpoint of her potentials. When it comes to memory fragments, this is where it gets a little sticky. There are two different types of builds so far, as most people have seen, and as far as I can tell, I agree for once. Going 2/2/2 Blackwing Seth Scarab Executioner's Tool is definitely going to be your best bet, since these tend to be the easiest fragments to get your hands on just randomly as you're going through normal Chaos runs. Building out something that allows for attack percent, crit damage, and crit chance is going to be your general overall look as far as your secondaries are concerned. If you do get a chance to get passion damage on your Desire Cup, more power to you. However, just getting something is fine enough, but obviously getting the additional passion damage is always going to be a boon. However, I would not say that it is your absolute number one choice for overall. You're probably going to be looking at crit chance, crit damage, attack percent attack, and then passion damage is probably going to be your number 5. If you can get it, cool. If not, you're not losing out a ton, honestly. Like, the percentage is negligible at best overall. However, that being said, it is also entirely possible to also build Prelude Blackwing. And actually, I'm just going to say you could build Prelude. You can put whatever your 2 piece of your desire is. You can put in Blackwing. You can put in Executioners. You can put in Sets. Whatever you want to do. Any of the other basic 2 pieces that we've had forever will fit with a 4-2 build if you're doing Prelude to a hero. However, the issue here is that this really only affects her rhythm cards, or just rhythm in general. Obviously, if you know what Prelude to Hero does, it says it is a 4 set that says whenever Passion or Void attribute attack cards of this specific unit are discarded, you gain a 15% critical chance for 1 turn, maximum 15%, maximum 2 stacks. So this is something that could be good if everyone on your team is either Passion or Void, and everyone on your team has attack cards discarded. This, again, like I said, only specifically affects Tenebria's and anyone else's in your party's rhythm cards. Anything beyond that, you're probably going to run into a problem. Last but not least, however, we're also going to look at her ego manifestations, and then we'll take a quick peek at her partner. E1 adds additional damage to the amount of damage that performance does from 100 to 150% whenever you use the photo time card. At the start of battle, you will create a photo card. Now remember, this is different from photo time. Photo specifically says that you can exhaust it for 0 AP and gain 2 ego points. E3 is her ego skill upgrade that will increase the amount of everyone's idol from 7 to 11%. So instead of doing 7% additional for each rhythm, it's 11%. Her E4 is Inner Memory that says each time a rhythm card is moved to hand or activated, you gain Everyone's Cheer. Everyone's Cheer is a 20 stackable damage increase specifically to Tenebria. So it's a total of 20%. At max stacks, it increases the damage amount of all rhythm cards by an additional 10%. Her E5 is her standard card upgrade potential. And her E6 is whenever a photo card is activated, which remember that is your 0 cost gain 2 ego. Instead of getting 2, you gain 3. And whenever a rhythm card is activate, you inflict 1 stack of All Eyes on You on the target. All Eyes on You specifically says that it increases the damage amount taken from any rhythm cards by 40%. And if a rhythm card was not manually used, this monster then becomes the target of those rhythm cards. And of course, if you apply All Eyes on You onto a different target, it removes it and adds it to the new target. Last but not least, we'll take a quick peek at Aria, which is Tenebria's specific idol partner. She has a basic passive that says increases all combatants' attack by 16% at 16 to 24, which is pretty normal. It increases the damage of all of the assigned combatants' basic attack cards by 4% for each basic attack that shares the same name, rhythm, up to a maximum of 24%. And of course, whenever a basic card is activated, the assigned combatant gains 1 stack of Swelling Melody. Swelling Melody stacks 4 times and gains 5% additional critical damage for that assigned combatant. So again, very, very specifically built for Tenebria. Good. And again, also very specifically built for rhythm cards. Last but not least, of course, we also have her active, which is an Aria for you. It is a 2-cost skill that increases the damage of all of the assigned combatants' basic attack cards by 20% for the entire battle. And if the assigned combatant ego skill has already been used in this battle, you will decrease the cost of the assigned combatant's basic attack cards by 1 AP for 1 turn. This basically makes it so that her rhythms will be slightly cheaper, and if you have any in hand that were 1 cost, it will reduce them down to 0, which makes it even extremely effective to help get basic cards out much quicker. Beyond that, in most cases, you're probably going to want to work on making sure that Music Start gets upgraded as quickly as possible, and make sure that you have the rhythm style of your choice. Having them in the graveyard is probably not going to be the best option, as you want to be able to cycle through them as quickly as possible and make sure that they're being used on a regular basis before you burn out at 30 stacks. Having the ability to manipulate where the cards are can also be something that you can utilize either Nia or Cassius for as far as card draw is concerned, utilizing characters like Mei Lin as primary DPS, or even using somebody like Selena, or even maybe Diana to a lesser extent is probably something that could also be done. Having Mika as an AP battery as well as for heals is something that will definitely assist, especially in the Arpeggio build. And maintaining some form of protection is also very, very important, as while she can do a lot of damage, she is not going to be able to survive very long without that extra little bit of oomph that you can get from having a protector. In most cases, a solid defender like Calipe, 9, or even Narja is going to give you a very strong team composition that gives you a very solid amount of healing, a solid amount of shield gen, and a solid amount of overall defense for a character who is incredibly, incredibly offensive. I hope you guys got some good information about Tenebria out of this. Let me know what kind of team you guys are building with her down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys again next time. Bye-bye.